Right, I'm going to kick off because we've got attendees coming in, but it's not fair. It's now 11:05, so I am going to start. So welcome to those that have arrived and keep coming in. I'm Gavin Wood. I'm one of the project advisors for the Combined Authority, specifically working on the City Connect project, which is the Combined Authority's active travel project. So working on cycling and walking schemes. So this webinar and upcoming webinars are funded through our Department for Transport active travel monies. I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping. You should all automatically be on mute, which I know that you are, with videos off, and I don't think you have capability of changing that. As a courtesy to the speakers, if you stay on mute, that would be appreciated. And hopefully at the end, there will be a time for a more interactive Q&A, I hope. Feel free to post questions as we go through. And I think there is a Q&A function, but put them in the chat if you would, and we will monitor them going through and post answers as we go through the presentations, if that's okay. My final bit of housekeeping is it's being recorded, and I think we will post it onto the City Connect web pages tomorrow on our Get Walking Support for Businesses web pages. So if people are not happy with that, then email me and let me know, and I will remove your name from anything. So that's enough kind of waffling from me. We'll get on. So first up is going to be Casey, and I will have speakers introduce themselves. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, I lost my voice there. Thanks, Gav. Good morning, everyone. My name's Casey McLean. I'm the service manager for the Travel Plan Network team, and we sit within Economic Services in West Yorkshire Combined Authority. Next slide, please, Gav. Okay, just a quick overview of what the Travel Plan Network is for those who may not know. We are a free support and advisory service to businesses, and we have a growing network. At the moment, we have over 500 businesses, 539 at the last count, of all sizes from all sectors across West Yorkshire. What we're mainly here to do is to support and encourage businesses to help their employees travel sustainably, whether that's to work, from work, or during work. We also signpost to sustainable travel offers, expertise to help reduce single occupancy car use, which is our main goal. And we work alongside Gavin and his team by referring into City Connect, our businesses. So we encourage all modes of sustainable travel, such as cycling, walking, public transport, car sharing, and the use of Car Club. And obviously, primarily today, we're here to talk about walking. Next slide, please, Gav. Okay, just a quick kind of overview of why sustainable travel matters. So the majority of you, I'm sure, are already aware that the UK has a target of net zero carbon emissions by 2050. West Yorkshire, our target is 2038 by the absolute latest, and transport currently contributes to over a quarter of domestic greenhouse gases. So walking, active travel can very much help reduce those emissions and help us get to the target we need to get to. Something a little bit more local, Bradford Clean Air Zone will come in 2022, and there is also an impact on business productivity. Next slide, please, Gav. Okay, so why should businesses engage in the agenda of sustainable travel? There's evidence that shows that employers that invest in appropriate workplace health initiatives to support the well-being and health of their employees, they will see a potential return or significant return on their investment. Now, that could be to do with employees who are more physically active, they take fewer sick days, they're more productive at work, and your business in general is more productive. So if you are operating freight vehicles, delivery vans, etc., you know, your business can be impacted with things such as traffic jams, congestions, and also the workforce. That there is some negative effects around being stuck in a traffic jam all day, as I'm sure we're all aware of, the frustrations and the stress that can bring when you're sitting on the M62 for an hour or longer trying to get somewhere. Next slide, please, Gav. So I'm just going to cover off a couple of things now around walking and what we have done in the past for our Travel Plan Network members to help support walking within organisations in the region. So in May, to celebrate National Walking Month, we did do a challenge referred to as Challenge 2038, and the goal of that was to walk a collective 238 miles as a membership, and that's in reference to our net zero target of 2038. So we had 90 people that signed up to the challenge, and we absolutely smashed the challenge that we set for ourselves because we walked 5,065 miles. The main reason for doing this challenge was to increase the awareness and engagement with the Travel Plan Network, for us to promote the support that Gav and his team are doing around walking that's available to organisations, and also to help encourage behaviour change and drive that change within the workforce. Next slide, Gav. Some pictures of some of our members taking part in the walking. Weather wasn't so good at that time of the year, as you can see by some of the pictures. And the next slide, Gav. And I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about walking meetings. Walking meetings is something that we have taken on within our team, and we are sharing that kind of insight and knowledge within the wider teams in the combined authority. It's something that people don't initially think of as being an option. And it changes the way that you go to meetings. It's really useful for meetings where you maybe, such as this, where you aren't actually interactive, where you aren't on camera, to download Teams or Zoom onto your phone, pop in your headphones and walk during the meeting. And what we've actually found is you're more engaged with what's been talked about, because you're not being distracted by emails coming through or other work that you end up doing instead. But on top of that, you're getting the physical benefits of going out and walking, exercise, activity, fresh air. We also, now that COVID restrictions are starting to reduce a little bit, we do walking meetings in person. So you can see Caroline there with two of our growth managers, and she met up in the Peace Hall with them to do a walking meeting. So there's loads of different benefits around walking. It develops team spirit, it helps improve your efficiency at work. And because you're in a different environment, you're not stuck in a meeting room, or you're not on your sofa at home and on a virtual meeting, it fosters inspiration and innovation. People think of new ideas. It also removes kind of barriers around decision making. People feel more open and able to have discussions when they're outside. And the final kind of thing that I would say around walking meetings is we need to kind of change the culture and the thought process around it. You know, if somebody is walking whilst on a meeting with you, you know, they're not on a break from work. It's just a different way of holding a meeting that would have taken place either in the office or virtually. And it's something that I would really encourage all organisations to try out and see how it works for you. And it can be adapted to suit different teams. So just to can you move on to the last slide? I think that is my last slide, Gav, is it? Oh, no. Okay, so influencing behaviour change. So things like walking meetings, things like the challenges that we've done, we primarily do these things to influence behaviour change, because what you find that change is a process. It's not a one-off decision. It doesn't happen overnight. Behaviour breeds behaviour, so people will see other people doing stuff that maybe is similar to themselves, and understand that possibly they can try it as well. Also, healthy competition tends to be a factor that helps kind of drive behaviour change. And people are influenced by the behaviour of their peers, society, their friends. And it is worth kind of looking at different initiatives and things that you can do to help kind of drive that behaviour change. And that's where the Travel Plan Network are there to support. So we support businesses to do that, and we can provide advice, support and information on how you can do that within your organisation, as well as referring into Gav and his team for the support that's going to be talked about a little bit later on. So I'll leave it at that at the moment, and if there's any questions, I can answer them at the end. Thank you,
Casey. Thanks very much. And I will post people's contact details up at the end. So the offers that are talked about that are available primarily to West Yorkshire businesses. I know there's some people who are on the call who aren't based in West Yorkshire, but maybe you're going to take away some great ideas to your respective districts. So next up is Pretty Gohill from Kirklees Council, who's going to speak from the perspective of an organisation that's tried to embed a culture of doing more walking, I believe. So Pretty.
Hi, morning everyone. Yep, Pretty Gohill, working in the public health team. I have a remit around supporting active travel in community, schools, educational settings and workplace settings. So my remit's quite broad in the context of settings, but it's also takes me into the world of other service areas that helps me trying to promote active travel, specifically walking and cycling for leisure. Next slide, please, Gavin. So in my presentation this morning, I want to kind of talk about some of the setting the context and rationale for us promoting walking, but also kind of in the wider context of active travel as well. I'm going to talk about some of the approaches that we had taken prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent lockdowns and the restrictions that were placed on travel and movement for us as an organisation. The impacts of COVID as we've kind of managed that within the context of walking, and some of the things that we're trying to plan moving forward as staff continue to work from home within our organisation, but also as we have a gradual kind of increase in staff coming back to the office place as well. Next slide, please. So from a public health perspective, our starting point is very much looking at some of the factors that go beyond individual behaviour change. We know that there are social, economic and environmental factors that go beyond the healthcare system and go beyond an individual's desire to engage in a particular behaviour. And in Kirklees, we do have an ambition that we want more people walking, cycling and commuting more actively, more often. And we know that, and Katie's touched upon this in her presentation, is that we know that that kind of helps reduce the impact of climate change. It improves the quality of places where people live, move and spend their time. And it also enables people to enjoy a healthy and active life with improved mental well-being. So in the context of walking, whether that be for a purposeful journey or, journey or for leisure, there are other factors that come into play, which this slide kind of highlights that. So for example, we think about, when we're thinking about behaviour change and in the context of this case walking, we think about, do people have the financial means and the resources to adopt those healthy behaviours? Do people live in vibrant areas where people live, spend time and work? Do people feel safe about the way in which they access that space and where they spend time and live and work? What's the access and quality of the green spaces where we might want people to encourage people to walk more for leisure? And what's the local infrastructure like? Living and working in busy built-up urban areas means that you do kind of have conflicts around vehicle movement that would actually help or hinder the ways in which people walk, whether that be for a purposeful journey or for leisure. And that will look and feel different to the approaches we might take with people living in rural areas. Next slide, please. So in order to get people to adopt a particular behaviour, it goes beyond some of those physical factors that I mentioned in my previous slide. It does go back to supporting people to have the capability, the motivation and the opportunity to be able to adopt a particular behaviour, and in this context, walking. So in terms of capabilities, do staff, we thought about within our organisation, did staff have the physical capabilities and the stamina to take up walking for work? Were they able to navigate their way around to walk for leisure and for purposeful journeys? We thought about whether staff had motivation. What were the things that would motivate staff to take up walking more? Was it around feeling safer on the roads and navigating their way around those roads and those spaces? Was it about having access to spaces within the place of where they worked, where they could walk for leisure? Was it about looking at incentives that would motivate people to work? So we've got things like concessions on public transport, but there might be other incentives that we wanted to think about. And did it need a leadership buy-in from the outset that would motivate people to do this more often? And then we thought about what would be the opportunities. Was it about creating an opportunity for certain parts of the system where flexible working isn't always the thing that's in place for a service area? Do we need to think about that some more in terms of enable that flexibility in the way people worked and their job roles, giving staff time to walk and actively travel to work, both whether that's for business related journeys or for commuting? And so all these aspects are relevant to the ways in which we might support our staff to travel more actively and walk for leisure. But it needed to be realistic in the context of our business, our workplace, the culture that we have within our workplace, the resources and capacity, and even things like understanding some of the challenges that we have within our district, which might be related to things like topography that actually could help or hinder the ways in which people access or do more of the activity that we have in mind, and in this case, walking. And I think for us, one of the other big take-home messages was to make sure that we came from a position of doing with rather than doing to. Next slide, please. I want to, from a public health perspective, we obviously know that walking is beneficial and is one of the activities that is part of physical activity. This slide potentially just shows that actually, no matter how much of activity you do, even if it's the smallest amount, it will have a cumulative health benefits. And this is very much coming through strongly with some of our messages that we've started to think about from a physical activity point of view, but also from an active travel point of view, that something is better than nothing. And this is coming through strongly with some of the recommendations and guidelines that have been refreshed for by the chief medical officers, and trying to look at ways in which we can break up prolonged sedentary periods, long periods of being sedentary. So instead of getting bogged down with intensity or the length of time or the frequency of physical activity, and in this context of walking and cycling, we wanted to come from a position of, like I said, like that slide says, doing something is better than doing nothing. And actually that actually widens the net for more people to engage and reap the benefits from these opportunities that we were trying to create through walking. Next slide, please. So in Kirklees, what we want to take a multifaceted approach. That we knew that there was no silver bullet to kind of to try and get more people walking for work or for leisure. And so we wanted to make sure that whatever we did, we would create opportunities that allow people to walk for everyone. We want to create a culture within the organisation across all layers of the organisation where walking is encouraged, and I'll come on to that in a bit later. We wanted to make sure that we increased opportunities for walking in and outside of work, and I think from the work that I do around active travel, the starting point when I'm working in various settings, whether that be a workplace or within communities or educational settings, it is starting from undertaking these activities from as a part of leisure rather than an active journey. And we know that from starting from that position, we are likely to change that behaviour to then people to think about walking and cycling for journeys later on when they've started to enjoy those activities for leisure. We wanted to make sure that we improved access of information and resources and access specialist support. So we've been very lucky to be able to work with the Combined Authority and the organisations they've worked with, like Living Streets and Travel Plan Network, to be able to help us work through some of the ideas that we've had. And we wanted to make sure that it involves staff at all levels to co-design some of our resources and the interventions that we've put in place to date. Next slide, please. So again, with my public health hat on, we don't work in isolation, and we heavily rely on other parts of the system. So it's taking that whole systems approach, and you can see some of the service areas that we already engage with. to support us to increase opportunities around walking, cycling and active travel. And within our workplace, that certainly is evident in the things that we do in terms of both developing opportunities in-house for our staff, but also public facing as well. So active travel is discussed in the context of climate emergency. It's discussed within the world of physical activity and mental well-being, and how that kind of impacts on productivity within the workplace. We think about active travel in the context of parks and green spaces. We talk about and think about active travel and moving around places from planning development and transport planning in the context of highway safety. We've also started talking about more and more about how active travel impacts on poverty and how people experience transport poverty, but also how people access healthy food and some of the opportunities that active travel brings to place through that kind of narrative. And we more recently started to think about active travel in the context of social value and social justice as well. Next slide, please, Gavin. So in terms of what we did, I think a starting point for us was looking at kind of understanding, looking at the data and intelligence, and certainly our starting point was looking at the demographics of our staff. We know that we employ over 7,000 members of staff, and of those 7,000 plus, over 80% are residents of Kirklees. We also know that over 50% are female staff as well. We wanted to look at the barriers and opportunities, so we do undertake staff travel surveys, and that's given us some insight, more deeper insight into people experiencing the barriers and their opportunities around walking and cycling. And we also wanted to look at and review the available guidance and good practice that's out there wider than our organisation, to make sure that we were aligned to some of that recommended guidance, but also to try and contextualise it to our workplace and our workforce. Next slide, please. So on a year-on-year basis, and this was prior to COVID, we were conducting staff travel surveys, and typically year-on-year we would report on our results in terms of what our staff workforce, how they were moving around to get to work, but also outside of work, whether that be for commuting or for leisure. But this was mainly focused around travel to work. And so we took this opportunity to not only publish our results, but we also took the opportunity to nudge behaviour change of the things that we were linked into, or the things that they could do that would help them to adopt opportunities where they could walk and cycle more often. Next slide, please. So from the outset, when we started to look at active travel opportunities, and in the context of this presentation, walking, we wanted to make sure that we got buy-in at all levels. And we started to think about, prior to COVID, the ways in which we would actually create within our organisation walking champions or ambassadors, and certainly from getting that endorsement from the top. We were trying to identify individuals at kind of that top layer of the organisation that were enthusiastic and self-motivated and could be an advocate for walking for us, not just within our own workplace, but with the connections they had with all our kind of stakeholders outside of the organisation to influence that active travel within those organisations that they're linked in with at that level. We wanted to make sure that we got managers buy-in, and certainly from speaking to some managers, they felt a bit concerned about the ways in which we would promote walking and cycling for business-related journeys. There was a perception that it would actually take longer to travel actively than getting into a car to a particular destination where a meeting's taking place. And I remember talking to a manager who was concerned about their staff travelling to another office space. It was around 20 minutes walking time. And we kind of did an exercise where we got into a car, did the same journey, and by the time we got to the car park, got into the car, made that journey, tried to find car parking, it actually took longer than 20 minutes. We did the same journey walking, and it took around 20 minutes. So it was just trying to instill that confidence at a managerial level that actually getting their staff to walk for business related journeys, or even trying to incorporate walking into the day from a health perspective, was a benefit to them, and it actually helped retain staff and their well-being, but it also helped to enhance and build on our position of being a good employer. And then the other bit of joining up the dots was around making sure that we got staff involvement. So through the staff travel survey, we've been working together with a small group of staff to think about some of the priorities that have come out of those staff travel surveys, and we've involved staff to design and develop like walking initiatives within our organisation. This was all kind of prior to lockdown. We wanted to restart that as we kind of get more and more into staff returning back to work. Next slide, please. So using the data and the insight from the staff travel surveys, looking at the recommended guidelines, we wanted to try and build on developing low cost, no cost initiatives, and taking a kind of a drip approach to ensure there was trade-offs presented at multiple benefits. So we thought about framing some of our communication coming from a position of health and well-being. We wanted to talk about and put forward messages that was around some of the business related benefits, so the savings that we would make as an organisation that related back to even our environmental impacts. And from a CSR point of view, we were obviously, Casey touched upon this, about some of the environmental impacts in terms of air quality. We wanted to raise the interest and profile around that, and then also some of the promote the social benefits around walking and cycling in terms of what that brings in terms of peer support, making connections, and doing activities that are a shared interests. So next slide, please, Gavin. So back in 2018, we were invited by the Combined Authority to take part in the Walk Friendly Workplace, which essentially was an accreditation framework for us to work through that helped us review the policies and practices specifically around walking. And that enabled us to review the data. So we were already capturing some of that data through travel surveys. We wanted to look at, compare ourselves to other areas as well. We wanted to make sure that it gave us a really good starting point to be able to have conversations at kind of managerial level and kind of at executive level to get that endorsement. And that led us to be able to host a number of staff information sessions about promoting walking in the workplace, whether that be for leisure or journeys. And it helped us frame some of our campaigns and some of the opportunities, and empowering our staff to take control themselves. Enabled us, Living Streets helped us work out some of the purposeful journeys that we wanted to map in terms of going back to my previous slide about getting managerial support, making sure that the journeys that we plan to and from office to office places, we could map those and actually highlight the ways in which staff could travel more actively instead of getting into a car to attend a meeting. Next slide, please. So the comms was very much, we started off with our comms trying to get that senior buy-in. So in my previous slide, we talked about kind of building in that buy-in and starting with kind of that executive level. And we got one of our heads of service to post a blog about walking, but also tagging into that the core benefits around mental well-being. And the picture there shows how we actually put the maps that Living Streets helped put together for those purposeful journeys from workplace to workplace. Members of staff, and we've got our chief exec there, our lead portfolio for health and social care, and heads of service, actually putting that that map to the test, and they made that journey actively to a particular place they chose within Huddersfield. Next slide, please. So going back to what I mentioned before around taking that co-production approach, once staff were made aware of the work that we were doing with Living Streets and the work that we were doing around the framework itself, we actually handed over kind of the power back to staff and got them to think about how they would plan walking opportunities. And in this case, this example is about how one particular office base have just started to arrange leisure walks at a local park. And they also then started to tag in some of the messages that were made readily available through Living Streets and other partner organisations. Next slide. So we wanted to reach out to all kinds of walkers, and we recognised there was walkers that there was people that wanted to walk that were quite new to that and needed to build their confidence and skills within that. But we also recognised there were people who were doing this already, and there were kind of those seasoned walkers out there. So these are some of the opportunities that we've got within Kirklees that are a little bit more structured, but still remain quite informal. And again, it was about putting that kind of control back to staff to be able to plan some of those sessions around some of these kind of structured walks as well. Next slide, please, Gavin. The other area, as we also recognise that, whilst we were encouraging walking and cycling as well, but in the context of this, in terms of walking, we wanted to enable people to do that a little bit more. So typically we do have the walk leader training that's available within the community settings, but we actually brought that in-house and encouraged our staff to take that up, and recognising the fact that actually a large majority of our staff actually are Kirklees residents. So not only would they be able to utilise these skills in-house for work, but also take it back into kind of their circle of influence as well. Next slide, Gavin. This is just an example of one of the walking maps we produced with Living Street. So we undertook a street audit, and we started to think about the journey that would actually enable staff to get to their A to B in terms of our work bases. And we tried to think about those journeys that we could navigate around some of the quieter routes as well. So recognising that those journeys didn't always have to be through kind of navigating around those busy networks. We tried to see if we could actually create a route that was actually a little bit more quiet and more pleasant to walk around. I think in hindsight, and if we were to do this again, we definitely want to incorporate messages around time and distance, because that's something that came through quite strongly. Certainly, we're speaking to our managers around the concerns they have around staff being able to travel actively to for business-related journeys. Next slide, please, Gavin. This is just another example of framing our walking and the messages around this, around walking for health. So we talked about kind of some of the different pulls and interests that staff might have. And in this case, it was very much around kind of walking for health and the opportunities that are already out there that they could tap into in their own time as well. Next slide, please, Gavin. We wanted to, this is just another slide of just making the connections with other campaigns. And again, getting staff to think about some of the national campaigns that we've got. The Couch to 5K is definitely something that came up as an opportunity for people to be able to walk and use that way to kind of build that momentum, but also kind of get better and better at walking for leisure, and then thinking about converting those to active journeys. Next slide, Gavin. So the impact in terms of what's happened prior to COVID is that we've been able to, we started to look at, on the back of the work that we did with Living Streets around walking and looking at some of the staff travel data, we started to formalise a staff travel group. So these are people who are interested in active travel, but they're also interested in mental wellbeing and kind of the green environmental agenda as well. So we wanted to work with that group to think about putting together an action plan based on the data and intelligence that we'd already started together as an organisation. And the plan was that they would also be consultees for transport planning schemes as well. We wanted to make sure that we use that group to pool the skills and expertise and sort of gather a pool of walk and ride leaders. Through that work, we wanted to make sure we could organise activities in and out of work and align our priorities to other kind of pools and interests. So, for example, we organise little walks, and then thinking about some of the work that could come link into our overall climate emergency work, but also kind of from a workplace health and wellbeing framework as well. Next slide, please. So here's just a few quotes of people that actually have engaged in walking in some shape or form, and some of those examples illustrate those journeys that have been made actively for work, but also the connections that they've made as a leisure walk, but also the ways in which they've used walking to manage their mental well-being. Next slide, please, Gavin. So during lockdown, a lot of us within the public health team were deployed to other roles, and we literally down tools our kind of day job. And I certainly did in terms of from an active travel point of view. I went on to move on to other roles, but it was really nice to see that during that time when we had kind of paused on some of our work around staff active travel, that walking still continued to be an area of focus that we wanted to promote during the lockdown and the travel restrictions that were put in place. So here are some examples that were posted on our staff intranet network. Nearly there. Last slide, Gavin, thanks. So what next? So we recognise that through COVID, and certainly within our district, we did definitely saw an increase in walking and cycling in some parts of the district, but we also saw a decline. So I think the reflection back on what's happened during the lockdowns and the travel restrictions, there is some opportunities to build on there. And so we are, as we start to think about the ways in which staff return back to work, which will also include them to continue to work from home, we wanted to think about active travel and the opportunities that we can capitalise during those opportunities. And that's included opening up civic spaces at place-based level where they've been working from home, and if those workplace, some of the civic spaces have been close to home to be able to open up, we wanted to see how those journeys could be made more actively and actually create workspaces that are close to home as opposed to coming to the kind of central locations that we typically have in prior to lockdown. Moving forwards, we want to restart the staff travel group. There's some kind of renewed and ongoing interest on the back of climate emergency. On the back of that, we want to try and re-energise and put focus back around active travel with a staff travel group. So hopefully we'll get that started up and running. Want to link in with our travel plan network colleagues around supporting businesses outside of our organisation to help us work and kind of be a role model to not only our staff but to other businesses as well. So we want to work with travel plan networks to help us do that. It's an opportunity for us to look and review our policies and do that kind of deeper review. So looking at our HR policies and weaving in active travel within that, staff induction and kind of those opportunities where we can promote active travel to visitors coming to our area. And then also linking in with like the new opportunities that are emerging through Living Streets and through the Combined Authority. And I've kind of put in there May for Walking, but I think we may already have somebody in place already to do that. But we could think about kind of working on that, building on what my previous slide around creating walking champions more locally. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. Sorry, that was a little bit long-winded.
Thank you, Pretty. Thanks a lot. So great evidence. I love the bit about the walking journey versus the car journey, which both evened out at 20 minutes, which was really good. My other comment was going to be for people listening in that Pretty presented loads of stuff there that they'd done. There is support available through the Combined Authority and its partners, and you'll hear a little bit about that later on. And then my third comment was going to be local government is often resistant to change and is really unwieldy. And I think if a big council like Kirklees Council can get stuff embedded, then more agile, smaller organisations can definitely do it. Right, so next up is Gemma, who isn't going to speak about walking. She's a speedier interloper, and she's going to talk about running. Gemma.
Cool. Thank you very much. Yeah, so my name's Gemma Bridge. I'm the running mayor of Leeds. My role I'll talk about, but it's basically aiming to encourage more people to run some everyday journeys, errands and commutes across the region. I'm based in Leeds, but I have been working with organisations across West Yorkshire. So yeah, so this presentation with that in mind. Next slide, please. So the Run Some campaign, there's a lot of clicks. So yeah, don't worry, just go. Yeah, fine. Thank you. That's okay. Go backwards one. That's okay. That's cool. That's fine. Yeah. So the Run Some campaign is a campaign to champion running and runners in our cities, towns and places. The campaign itself was founded by Runners World Active Things, and a few other organisations that came together and identified the need to promote running as a form of active travel alongside cycling and walking, both in terms of leisure and well-being, but also as a form of travel. The campaign was launched in March, and since then we've got a big network across the UK, all working together to help organisations, individuals, schools, and various other groups to improve running and help people to run some more journeys in their places. Next slide, please. We can just click through all of them, that's fine. There's 6. Thank you. Yeah, so this is just an overview of why active travel is important. I feel like Casey and Pretty both covered this pretty well, so I won't stay on this slide too long. But basically, it's just highlighting that active travel is obviously really important for us all to try and promote, whether we're with our employees or with our friends and families, in order to reduce car dependency and improve local air quality, which also improves public health. So you've got that systems working there as well. Also, active travel can help to improving community engagement by helping people to come together and get to work together. And then there's also things about in the workplace itself. So by enabling people to use active forms of travel, it not only improves the health and well-being of the employees, but it can also improve their productivity in the workplace, reduce absenteeism, and then just improve overall health and well-being of employees. So next slide. Again, 6 clicks, please. Okay, go back, that's okay. Sorry, thank you. One more slide. That's okay, thank you. Sorry about all the clicks.
That's all right, Gemma.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and so this slide here is just basically giving an overview of why we should be considering promoting running alongside walking and cycling. So predominantly in most organisations' active travel strategies, running isn't mentioned. It's also not mentioned by the government. It's not being funded currently in the active travel agenda. And that's despite the fact that running as a form of active travel has greater health benefits beyond walking and cycling. It also enables businesses, organisations and groups to develop links with existing running groups. So the routes that are being developed for walking or cycling are already there. Lots of running groups already have those in place, which we can build on and work with. We can link up with running groups to help people working in organisations to run with others if that's what they want, or if they need extra support, for example, through a Couch to 5K programme that the business isn't able to offer, then local running groups can support with that. Running also enables people to get further than walking because obviously it's quicker. So if people are not willing to walk, for example, 3 miles, but they may be willing to run because it's half an hour as opposed to an hour, then that's something else to consider when promoting active travel formats. It's also more affordable than cycling because obviously you don't need a bike and it's just a pair of trainers. And then there's also no additional infrastructure needed, so no extra paths because you can use the paths for walking. You don't need any bike locks or any bike spaces. So for an organisation, particularly smaller organisations that may struggle to promote things like cycling because of a lack of facilities, it's a good thing to kind of offer in addition to walking. And then finally, running is just fun. You know, it may not be fun for everyone to start with, but it definitely becomes fun once you get started. Next slide, please, Gav. Okay, and I think it's 3 clicks. Thank you. Yeah, so the running mayors, I'm one of them, I'm based in Leeds, as I mentioned. There's currently 30 of us across the UK, and we act as ambassadors for the Run Some campaign. And our role is to champion running in our cities and places. We do work together if there's a kind of a national campaign or if there's something that we think could benefit the whole community. So something that we've been working on is trying to advocate for running to be considered as in the active travel agenda by the government, and also consider the benefits of running for mental health, which is often overlooked by organisations but also by the government. And we come together each month to discuss ideas or things that are working or not necessarily working well. And obviously a lot of organisations don't just operate in one region. So if we're working with one organisation, for example, in Leeds or York or whatever, we can then pull together and work with the same organisation that's also based in London or Somerset or wherever it may be. Next slide, please, Gav.
Nope.
That's okay, don't worry, all good. Okay, 3 more, please. Yeah, and so in my role, it's a voluntary role, but it's kind of become a bit of a passion project. So it's taken up quite a lot of my life, but that's fine. And in this role, I aim to do 4 things. Primarily, it's about increasing the talk about running. So it's enabling more people to talk about it, potentially those, especially those, sorry, who aren't often heard in the discussion. So people who are younger, older, living in more deprived communities, or organisations that are potentially smaller and may not otherwise be heard in discussions around active travel and just travel in general. Also working with organisations and groups to help make running safer and more accessible. So potentially if that's running in a group or identifying routes that are more safer because they're lit or there's less litter. Also, I have been working and supporting workplaces to make running a viable mode of transport. So that is often through just increasing communication, so content for websites or developing forums or groups and bringing people together that are already running. And then finally also promoting running across the life course and identifying and supporting those benefits to mental and physical health. Next slide, please. Okay, I think there's 4. You can just go through, click, and again. One more and one more, please. Thank you. Okay, so this is the kind of actions I've been doing across Leeds over the past few months. So working to enable a wider diversity of voices to be heard. I've been meeting with different organisations, people, groups to identify and discuss the opportunities and barriers to running. So similar to, I think it was Pretty that mentioned the map of Kirklees and the barriers and opportunities there to walking. So similarly, I've been doing things like that with running. And then also collaborating with organisations to identify ways that we can overcome the barriers or at least promote those opportunities. And then in terms of making running safer, been working with organisations like Run Leeds to develop links with local clubs and races, Parkrun, for example, to help organisations to kind of signpost their employees to those groups to get them started. And then I'm also, in terms of making running safer and more accessible, for me, that's important about air quality. So I've become a steering group member of the Clean Air Vision for West Yorkshire, which has been a good way to network with others who are interested in this, and also to identify ways that we can promote active travel to align with that agenda. And then in terms of supporting workplaces, I've implemented the Running Friendly Workplace Award, which is free, and it can just be implemented to support organisations to identify ways that they can support their employees. Developed a range of social media and written content which has been shared across newsletters, intranets, online blogs and things like that to promote running as to get running talked about. And then in terms of promoting running across the life course for mental and physical health, I've attended a range of webinars using and drawing on some of my other experience and my role as a researcher, and then also advocating for running to be socially prescribed and collaborating with Good Gym, which I can also discuss at a later date, but that's something else I'm involved with in Leeds. Next slide, please. Okay, and this just goes through again these things that I can do. I think there's 6 of these, Gav, that I can do with different organisations. Okay, 8. Thank you. That I can do with different organisations to support them to get running in their workplaces and to help employees to run. Next slide, please. And then this is just a final slide here, just if you want any more information about running and what I can do, and also the Run Some campaign is just, the link to that is just at the bottom of this slide. Thank you very much for listening.
And can people just make direct contact with you? I know you're kind of there as the running mayor of Leeds, but in your opening statement, you said you were happy to go beyond that.
Oh yeah, of course. And equally, if you've got interest in other locations across the UK, I'm happy just to forward on to another running mayor who may be better placed for that.
Cool, thank you, Gemma. Really, yeah, really interesting. That thing about seldom heard groups, I think most people, certainly the panelists and probably most of the listeners, will be familiar with that as an issue. And I think we in local government working around active travel hold our hands up and probably admit that running, I mean, we've chatted prior to this, Gemma, and would admit that running often gets, is not even at the table usually.
No.
All right, Cool. All right. Thank you, Gemma. We will move on to our next speaker, which is Rebecca, who is our colleague from Living Streets. Rebecca.
Brilliant, thank you. Hi everyone, thanks Kevin. It's brilliant hearing everybody else's presentation so far, so it's really interesting. So hopefully mine won't kind of copy too much. But so basically, so my name's Rebecca. I work for Living Streets, which is the charity behind everyday walking. I'm here today to give an overview of why walking is important and how easy it is to fit more walking into your working day through our Walking Works programme. So I'm going to give a brief overview on who Living Streets are, why walking is important, what the benefits are to employees and employers, and how to fit more walking into your working day through our Walking Works programme, which has been fully funded through West Yorkshire Combined Authority and City Connect. So it's completely free for participating workplaces, and I'll let you know how to sign up at the end. Next slide, please, Gavin. So who are Living Streets? Hopefully some of you will have already worked with us or know who we are, but for those that don't, we are the UK charity for everyday walking. Our aim is to create a nation where walking is the natural choice for everyday local journeys, free from congestion and pollution, with an aim to achieve a better walking environment and to inspire people of all generations to enjoy the benefits the simple act of walking brings. We've been around for over 90 years. In our early days, we were called the Pedestrian Association, and our campaigning led to the UK's first zebra crossing and speed limits. Now our campaigns and local projects deliver real change to overcome barriers to walking, and our groundbreaking initiatives such as the world's largest walk to school campaign, WOW, so if you've got primary school children, you might know about that, and then also our Walking Works programme that we're talking about today encourages millions of people to walk. Next slide. Thank you. So why is it important to walk more? Next slide. Seems a bit of a useless slide, that. So as you can see from there, it's recommended adults get at least 150 minutes of physical activity a week. So that's around 2.5 hours, which again equates to around 30 minutes 5 times a week, which kind of links in nicely with adding more walking into your working week. As it stands, you can, I've done the same thing as Gemma. If you just want to click through to those 3 different things, just click 3 times, thank you. As it stands, walking levels are in a serious decline and is no longer seen as a mode of transport, but a hobby. So for instance, we drive to the gym to walk on a treadmill. And we're passing these unhealthy behaviour trends on to our children. So a generation ago, around 70% of us walked to school, now it's less than half. In a work kind of capacity, I think around just 10% of us walk to work in the UK, and over a third don't get enough physical activity. So it's more important than ever to really kind of bring more walking into your day. So there are a plethora of reasons why we should walk more, many of which you've already heard. But just to kind of recap on them, it's really good for your physical health. So by adding a 20-minute walk into your day, you can help stave off chronic conditions like heart disease, certain cancers and diabetes. It can also help improve your heart health, metabolism and muscle tone and strength. So particularly for those people that are working at desks all day and have back problems, getting out for a walk is really important. It can also burn calories. Walking is also really good for your mental well-being. It's proven that walking improves self-esteem, your mood, quality of sleep, whilst helping to reduce stress and anxiety and fatigue. I know, particularly for myself during kind of this pandemic, I've been working siloed at home, so really getting out and having that time out for outside walks has really helped with my mental kind of mood and capacity. I know it has with other people that we've been working with across the country. And it can also help reduce the risk of depression and Alzheimer's. So scientists at Essex University found that well-being is boosted significantly by as little as 5 minutes outdoor exercise. So getting those outdoor walks in as part of our Walking Works programme in and around your working day is really key. And then also walking is really good for the environment. So road traffic is one of the biggest sources of pollution and a major threat to clean air. So by promoting and enabling walking for everyday short journeys is key. It's also the quickest, cheapest and easiest way to reduce air pollution in our towns and cities. So as a workplace, you can really lead the way by implementing and promoting more sustainable travel. And it's also completely free. You don't need any special equipment to walk. So as you can see, there are many reasons why you as individuals should walk more, but how can you do this as a workplace? How can you get your workforce to walk more, and what are the benefits to you? So this leads me to the next slide, please. What is Walking Works? So as you heard at the beginning, Living Streets, we partnered with West Yorkshire Combined Authority and City Connect to help support workplaces across West Yorkshire who are aiming to build and embrace a culture of walking, which hopefully you all are, and that's why you're here today. So our Walking Works programme offers a package of activities to help tackle barriers to walking and create opportunities for more people to walk more often. As part of this partnership, we're able to work with 60 workplaces across all 5 local authority areas on a first come, first served basis to help embed a culture of walking. And as mentioned, it's completely free, so there's kind of no reason why you wouldn't get involved. Next slide, please. Great. So what is Walking Works and what does this mean for the workplaces participating? I don't know if there's another thing supposed to be on that slide. Oh yeah, thank you. We would start with initial consultation. So once you've decided you want to participate, we'd have initial consultation to find out what your unique needs are for your organisation. From there, we then look to advise and implement a range of initiatives offered in the package to increase walking rates amongst your staff. So primarily with this package, we'd be able to offer kind of on-hand support with a kind of tailored 4 weeks comms package, which has challenges to encourage employees to walk more with top tips and a virtual pledge, as well as kind of linking back to what those health and physical wellbeing benefits are. We'd also be able to provide virtual walk champion training, which is virtual at the moment because of COVID-19. It might be that we're able to do that in person at a later point. And that would be for key employees within your workplace that want to become walking advocates. And they would then be given the tools to then kind of continue on the work that we're doing. And we'd also provide on-site support with events, again, in line with COVID-19. As I said, our package of activities is adaptable, so it's suitable for all workplaces, whether your staff are working on site, within your offices, warehouses, stores, or working from home. It can be run in small, medium or large workplaces in both urban and rural settings. It really is adaptable for all. As it stands, around 1/3 of all adults' life is spent working, which is quite high. So for that reason, it really is important for your employees to feel valued at work through activities that promote staff wellbeing and increase their sense of belonging to the business. So by taking part in Walking Works, you'll be able to take those initial steps towards improving the health and wellbeing of your staff. So that's quite a lot of benefits. So the next kind of thing is what are the kind of benefits to employers for promoting health and wellbeing to their staff. So next slide, please. So as a workplace, if you were looking to implement more walking through our Walking Works programme, you could look that you'd be promoting physical and mental health, so obviously something we've already touched on. You can boost work performance by up to 15%. So when employees add regular exercise into their day, they become more productive. It helps to reduce absenteeism as staff feel valued, refreshed and ready to work. Next slide. Thank you. It can also boost morale and job satisfaction amongst staff. For instance, a highly engaged workforce can improve operating income by up to 19%, and it can also enhance corporate image. Walking can also ease 2 of the biggest side effects of the coronavirus pandemic: isolation and inactivity. So by adding a fake commute in the morning, if you're working from home, a lunchtime walk or a walking meeting into your daily routine it not only boosts employees' physical and mental well-being, it can also help reduce social isolation as employees get to know their local community and connect with other colleagues that they perhaps otherwise wouldn't have done. So there's just a plethora of benefits to that. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to recap because I've talking quite a lot, but if you were to sign up to Walking Works, what you would be offered initially, obviously, is a consultation. You would then be offered a 4 weeks comms package, virtual walk champion training and on-site support. But again, it would all be tailored to fit with your company, so that it's not just kind of one size fits all. We have it there already, but we would look to kind of tailor it. So it might be that you want to send the comms package out in email format, for instance, or like we worked with Next recently, and we kind of adapted it into a poster format to go on their internal social media platform. Or it might be that you actually want to engage with staff that are working in warehouses or on their feet, and so actual physical posters would work better. So it's adaptable for all. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, fab. So don't take my word for it, I guess. This is kind of hearing from others. We've had an abundance of case studies and testimonials from employees, workplaces and local communities we've worked with in the past. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the link to all of these case studies will be in the presentations at the end. But just to kind of overview of it. So Susan McFarlane, the head of marketing for a group of businesses in the UK pension industry, said walking at work is something that continues to be relevant. Whether you're working, regardless of the pattern of your day, it can help to improve productivity and well-being. Next one, please, Gav. Thank you. Ricardo, a global engineering business that participated in Walking Works, but on a West Sussex site. So I said this is specifically for West Yorkshire, but as a charity, we work across the country. They said going for a walk before starting work helps to feel like you have mentally arrived at work, and similarly, a walk at the end of the day helps you leave your work mindset behind and switch off. And then if you just click 2 more, thanks, Gavin. And then just click again if that's all right. Sorry, thank you. And then Alwyn at Ashford and St Peter's NHS Foundation Trust, again, they participated in Walking Works, said it's great having an external organisation dedicated to walking who have all the facts and benefits of walking as it helps to focus your mind. So that's just a few of the kind of the quotes of the workplaces we've been working with. We're working with a lot more. We're already working with quite a few within West Yorkshire, but we have capacity to work with more. So please do get in touch. Next slide. So that is the end. So that essentially is Living Streets and Walking Works in a nutshell. If you'd like to find out more, you can contact me via the email below, which is actually Russell, but it will get to me. Or you can contact Gavin, hopefully, at City Connect, and he can pass it on. So I hope it's been useful. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Rebecca. That was great. So, yeah, the offer with Living Streets remains our City Connect's primary offer around walking and support for businesses. So like Rebecca said, if you want to sign up to that, then you can either get in touch with Russell or you can get in touch with me, and we will send it on to the relevant person. Right, thank you. Finally, last but not least, is going to be Danny Bulmer, who is the founder of Good Footing, which is a community interest company based in Perth. Danny, over to you.
Well, I was going to say morning, everyone, but it looks like we've crept over 12 o'clock. So hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to talk about Good Footing. Yeah, as Gavin says, I'm the founder of a community interest company, a social enterprise called Good Footing. Briefly, I'm going to talk about why Good Footing came about, a little bit about my story. And then I'm going to talk about what we do. I'm going to thank all the previous speakers because you've covered quite a lot of areas around, the benefits and impacts of walking. So thanks very much for doing half of my job today. But I'm going to talk, I think, about, some specific stories and things that I've experienced from starting Good Footing literally 3 weeks before we came into lockdown last year. So it's been an interesting journey with, that in the background. Around 4 or 5 years ago, I experienced mental ill health myself. I was trying to do too many things, trying to run 3 businesses at a time. And yeah, just had pretty much a breakdown. And I walked. I have a dog, so we walk, pretty much every day. But part of my recovery from that was walking in earnest, and I can pretty much clearly say that I walked out of clinical depression. And so, walking for me was hugely impactful in a positive way to come out of that period of mental ill health. My professional sort of background has been in design and creative communications agencies. And so I was the person that businesses, organizations look to think creatively, critically, to solve business problems through communications. And I had pretty much lost that when I was poorly. And walking for me not only helped reduce, minimize, and almost, completely negate my sort of mental ill health, but it actually started to have a really positive impact on my cognitive thinking, my creative thinking, crucially, and critical and clear thinking as well. And that sparked something inside me. And I thought, this is not unique to me, surely. So I then started on this journey of sort of understanding what it was all about. And as I say, back in, well, it was towards the end of 2019, where I really started to sort of pull these things together. Done lots of workshops with organizations over the years about how to tackle problems creatively and critically, co-design, creative thinking. And I wanted to bring these things together through the power of walking. As I say, I put it out there in the public domain 2-3 weeks before lockdown. Because of the restrictions, we weren't able to bring people together. So I guess the first part of the journey for Good Footing was me reaching out into my community and saying, look, if you're struggling, if you need some support, I'll walk with you. So I walked with individuals initially in 2020. And from that, I started to understand and learn about really being that person, or creating that space for people to tackle issues in their life. And throughout 2020, I then designed a 6-week walking well-being program for people who would come on a walk a week for 6 weeks. And we would walk through their problems that they're having. And that experience for me really sort of created the foundation for what Good Footing is about today. I walked with different people within my community that all had different challenges in both work and life. And so it gave me a really diverse insight into, people's challenges and how we would walk through those. And in fact, I guess the strapline for Good Footing is that we walk people forward in life. Thankfully, my local council sort of caught wind of what I was doing, and we were able to tap into some initial funding to deliver some of these one-to-one programs, obviously whilst we were still in restrictions. And then when the restrictions started lifting, we were able to start some group initiatives. Obviously, thinking longer term about how we can work effectively, how we can work within communities, we start to think about, well, how can we become sustainable? And for me, it was very much about looking at our hyper-local situation within communities and seeing how we can answer some of those problems collaboratively. Also, it was about trying to embed and build a culture of looking after one another. As I say, the majority of Good Footing's existence has been, within the pandemic. And so mental health, well-being has very much been a focus. So the majority of our work has been around social care and health. One of the initiatives that we have kind of instilled once we've been able to start group walks is the Pay It Forward initiative. So therefore, encouraging people to come onto our walking experiences, knowing that when they donate and pay to come on that experience, that money goes into the pot for us to be able to deliver one-to-one, for example, our one-to-one mental well-being walks. Again, we're just trying to encourage people to get involved in some really fun and obviously beneficial to your health activities, but look out for other people within the community. and that's been really successful. Our plan is to work across sort of 3 areas really: social care and health. Obviously, that's our that's our social cause. That's the main social cause behind Good Footing. Culture. We believe that there are so many exciting opportunities around showing people what is on your doorstep in your community through cultural walks, so food and drink trails, for example, and our walk and experiences. On Monday evening, we delivered one of our first walk and wild swims. So, we are partnering with other organizations and individuals who align with, our ethos and what we believe in terms of well-being and positivity through mindset and well-being, and business as well. We understand that, all of us have a real changing sort of environment now, particularly with COVID, around where we work, how we access work, and walking in itself, as the other speakers today have talked about, can be really, really beneficial. As I say, my personal experience and the experience I've had from feedback from people we've walked with around the cognitive benefits of walking are unbelievable. They're magical. They really are. And so, yeah, so we're kind of covering those sort of three key areas. Gavin, do you just want to flick, if Gavin's still there?
I think he just popped off.
Right. Do you want to just flick through some of those quotes, please? Yeah. Just on one again. So yeah, so if you just want to kind of rotate through those, the slides are really, these are quotes from individuals who've been on a lot of our walks. Yeah, some of these outcomes that we've had, for example, I walked with a lady called Liz. She was a keen walker with her husband for many, many years until he had a stroke, and she then became his full-time carer about 5 years ago. So her ability, pre her becoming a carer, was fantastic. But actually, when she came to Good Footing, she lacked that confidence, both in her ability and actually, getting out there. So after, a 6-week walking program, she felt more confidence in that ability. And in fact, I got a message from her about a month ago saying that she had initiated some of her own walks and invited some of her friends along with her to walk. So, that's a great case study in terms of pretty much getting her out there and walking. And she's obviously, self-sustaining that healthy exercise. She's walking locally now to where she works. Other instances are, I walked with a lady called Emma, who was really struggling with her mental well-being. And we walked and worked through her situation. And also out of that, we actually talked about her professional experience as an artist, and we helped, and I guess this was, my business experience came into play in the respect of helping her cultivate that and move her forward. And now she's actually producing artwork and selling that successfully through galleries. So, these are just some examples of the different types of scenarios that we're experiencing. And as I say, taking people forward in life, whatever that situation may be. Our success, I guess, to date, obviously with the restrictions being lifted, This year, we've been able to do a lot more group activities. All our group activities are pretty much, well, they are all fully booked every time we put something out there, which is great. There is obviously this wave now where people are just dying to get out, and it's great that, I've been able to see, albeit through this sort of microcosm of where I live, more and more people wanting to get out and access nature, get outdoors and feel healthy. But we've been able to do a lot more since restrictions have been lifted. A project that we have just kicked off with Yorkshire Brain Tumour Charity is that we've designed walks in various locations, all very accessible locations across Yorkshire, to be able to take not only patients, but crucially patients' families and carers on walks, to give them, as I say, that space and time to work on their own well-being. So that's one project that we're working on. We have just successfully tapped into some funding for us to be able to continue to deliver our one-to-one programs and buddying up walking. Yeah, I guess our success and our model is very much based around collaboration and working in partnership with community organisations, the local councils and businesses as well. We're doing a wellbeing festival next month, which will bring in other people and organisations within our local area to deliver something, quite special around wellbeing. And that's key for us. So I guess what we can do is we can design from scratch, co-design and deliver initiatives around walking and well-being, but bringing in other aspects that almost level up that walking experience. And we can, design bespoke programs and initiatives around that. We can help set up programs as well for organisations. And I guess, the one thing I just wanted to mention, which I have forgotten, social prescribing has been a real key area that we've focused a lot on, and we've built some great bridges with social prescribing link workers. So we're doing a lot of work around that. Where we're now, we are looking at our sort of next year ahead, I guess. September is kind of a big month for us in the respect of our future strategy. And we are getting busier and busier. And I guess our need is to find people who are community champions, what we call good footers, to help us deliver the programs that we are already doing and the initiatives that we have as part of our roadmap to grow good footing. We would love to see a good footer in every community who is, as I say, a community champion that has that hyper-local knowledge and that ambition and passion to affect positive change in their community. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you again for inviting me to come and talk to you about good footing.
Thank you, Danny. That's some amazing stuff. I've never heard any of that because we only just virtually met like a few weeks back. So yeah, that was really good. And I think you pointed something out, just the importance of connectedness and walking as we move from our one public health epidemic possibly into another around mental health, and how walking might sort of head that off at the pass. So that is amazing work, and we should have a separate conversation, I think, about how we in the Combined Authority and City Connect might support you in creating your network of good footers.
Great.
I know we lost a few attendees there because we've run slightly over time. I'm gonna, with the panel's permission, if you're prepared to stick around for another 5 minutes, just invite people to ask any questions. And if people want to put a hand up, I think I can stop sharing this screen, and I think I will have the power to unmute people. So if people have got any questions, if you want to put a hand up, I will try and do my best to work the tech and unmute you. 5 minutes, and then we'll call it a day after that. Anyone? No questions? Oh, so Caroline.
Hello.
Hi, Caroline.
It's actually a question for Gemma, but it doesn't matter. I'll ask it anyway. But because I won't mind having a go at, oh, here she is. Hello, Gemma. I'd really like to have a go at running commuting when we start drifting back to the office. But how do you do it with a laptop and your lunch and all that sort of thing? Because basically, I usually take the bus and the train to work, and I want to cut out the bus part because I just think the amount of time it takes me to walk to the bus stop and then to walk from the bus station to the train station, I might as well run it and just do the whole lot in one go.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's definitely a question a lot of people ask. It depends on how much stuff you have. But when I used to run to work, I just had a pretty good rucksack, and as long as it's secure and it's got like straps around your waist and shoulders, it holds it in place pretty well. An alternative thing you could look at doing is kind of running some of that journey. So you could run to a bus stop that's further away than you were normally getting, then get the bus and then run the rest of the way, which is another thing. So I also used to do that as well. So I used to run to the station, get the train, then run the rest of the journey. So instead of doing 10 miles there and back, I was doing 5. So it just makes it a little bit more manageable. But yeah, I think investing in a good rucksack is definitely probably the first thing to look at.
Okay, it's that I take it if I go on like specialist running sites, they'll sell like laptops.
Yeah, even like to be honest.
Yeah.
Some good, running pretty, not too expensive. Just as long as it's got the straps around the waist. If you've got a few things, a strap around the waist is ideal.
I might email you, Gemma.
Okay, absolutely fine. I can give you.
You can send me some links. Yes, that'd be grand. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. Jane.
Hello.
Hi, Jane.
Yeah, thanks. It's been really interesting. I've got a sort of bit of a philosophical question, perhaps aimed at Danny maybe, or Rebecca. What is it about walking that does all of those things that you listed about critical thinking and problem solving and creativity? What is it? The physical act of walking, putting one foot in front of the other? Is it being outside? Is it being with other people and talking? What is it? What do you think it is? Because I absolutely agree, but I don't know.
Great question, Jane. You've got about an hour, Danny, to come back to us with 2,000.
It's all of those things. There are many things happening when you're walking. You've got the circadian rhythm of it. You've got the changing environment of it. If you're walking with another person, you're walking side by side, which is a big difference, particularly if you're thinking about, mental health, typical mental health counseling session where, that stereotypical environment is in a room and you're sat opposite each other, and, that can be quite difficult. So I think for me, there are a number of things happening, particularly accessing nature is a really good thing. And so when all of those things are happening, they are calming, they become inspiring, and that's not necessarily, on that actual walk. Emma, who I spoke about earlier, I get a message from her, the day after, or maybe in the evening, and say, I can't believe how productive I've been. I've been in the studio and I've just done this, and so it's post walk that a lot of these things can happen. So yeah, I guess that's my answer. to that.
Yeah.
Jane, I've just posted a link as well. I follow a guy, a podcast. It's a guy called Dr. Ranjam Chatterjee, and a couple of years ago he did one about the superpower of walking by it's an Irish professor, a guy called Shane O'Mara, and he talks about like connectedness to people and place, and just feeling like you are traveling kind of in a place rather than through a place, and the way that affects you sort of your mental well-being. And that's the same for running or being on a bike. I think like that same kind of rationale stands up. You're not just passing through a place, you're actually kind of engaging with a place in a much different way than you do if you travel through via motorized means.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Danny has said, and I think for me, like getting out for a walk definitely gives me clarity and a clear head for when I start work or if I'm doing something else in particular. So you've got the social aspect and the environmental aspect, but you've also just got that kind of downtime to kind of think things through. So I think Caroline just mentioned it in the chat, and I do it myself, doing a fake commute in the morning. So otherwise you kind of get out of bed, you roll out of bed basically, and you go to your desk and you start work. So because I work from home, but instead I kind of do a fake commute, and I might only be a 10-20 minute around the block, and I come back really refreshed and ready. Whereas when I don't do that, I definitely feel like the morning for me is not that productive.
Cool. Any more questions? One thing I was going to as well just ask the panel. I'm going to share the slides with everyone if you're happy for me to do that, and invite people to get in touch directly. Okay, I think as there's no more questions coming in, we'll draw a line under it, and I'll thank you guys for taking time out to speak to everyone, and for everyone who did sign up and who joined the webinar. I hope it's been interesting, and I hope that some of you take advantage of the support that's available and reach out to Danny and Gemma around the mental health and the running aspect. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.